Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you and talk about some cameos. In a few moments we'll go camera down, but I thought I would introduce myself first, especially since this is my first video on my new YouTube channel. My name is Lisa. You might be wondering about my accent. I'm from New Zealand, also known as Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud, and it's springtime here. I love antique and vintage jewellery, and I have a particular passion for cameos. I sell antique and vintage jewellery on Etsy, and I'll put the link in the description below this video. The cameos that I'll show you today are either from my personal collection or they're from the store. Some are already online and the others will be coming on in the near future. So let's take a look at some cameos. Here is the collection of cameos that I'm going to show you today. It's not a huge collection, but there's good variety. I fell in love with cameos because each one is individual and unique. The reason they're unique is that they're hand carved. So for me, wearing a cameo is like wearing a portable work of art. Not all cameos are carved by hand. Costume cameos are generally made in moulds from plastic or glass. But what people tend to call real cameos are carved by hand, and for that reason no two will ever be exactly the same. In this collection, all but one of these cameos is hand carved, and you can probably pick out which one wasn't carved by hand. I think I will start by showing you that one first. So did you guess it was this one? This is a Wedgwood cameo, and it's the one cameo in the collection that wasn't carved by hand. Wedgwood is an English company which was started by Josiah Wedgwood in 1759, so really old company, but they're still producing things today. One of their main lines is called jasperware, and that's what this is. When they make jasperware, the white reliefs are made separately in moulds and then applied to the background and then fired together. You will also find lots of different jasperware products like vases and plates and cups and trinket boxes. One of the nice things about Wedgwood jasperware cameos is that you can often tell the date from the back. It says Wedgwood, made in England, 62. So this one was made in 1962 and it's set in sterling silver. Here are some cameos carved from carnelian shell. This is the shell that is most commonly used for cameos. It's quite a fast growing shell, so they get to harvest lots of them. And it's that kind of browny, peachy, orangey colour. You'll see that there's two colours on there. That's because the shell has different layers of colour naturally within it. So it's not like these two parts have been put together like the Wedgwood. Actually, it's just carved from a single piece of shell, and the carver makes use of those different coloured layers to create a sense of a background and a subject. So these cameos have the most common kind of subject matter, which is the head and shoulders of a lady. The one on the left is the oldest of the group. You can tell that really from the mounting, it looks Edwardian, so early 1900s. The one on the right is Art Deco in style, so 1920s, 1930s. And then the little earrings, the screwback earrings, they're probably 40s or 50s. So it's most common for the lady to be looking to the right. There's quite a few different theories why that is, but the one that makes sense to me is that most people are right-handed rather than left-handed. So if you're a carver, it's easier to carve a face from the right-hand side if you're right-handed. So it seems logical that the ones that look to the left, like the one on the right here, was probably carved by a carver who is left-handed. Now I believe this one is older than the other ones I've shown you so far. I believe it's Victorian, so from the 1800s. And And the subject matter is one that was really popular during the Victorian time, and that is subjects and scenes from Greek and Roman mythology. So here we have Eos, the goddess of dawn in Greek mythology. In general, when I see these, the eagle has a cornucopia in its claws. This one doesn't, but I still think that is Eos. You can see that she's been really beautifully carved. Have a little look at the back. It's set in 800 silver with a gold wash over, and you can see it has a C-clasp. Here's another cameo carved from carnelian shell. If you're eagle-eyed, you might notice that this one wasn't shown at the beginning of the video. I almost forgot it. So this one is set in a very high carat gold. That XRFs is 21.5 carat gold. And it's a scene, so a little bit more unusual in that it's not just one person's head. This is a scene, I believe these are Roman soldiers in battle. They're carrying spears and shields. So when you have cameos that have multiple people, scenes, quite complex scenes like this, they tend to be more valuable. Here's the back. I believe this cameo is quite old, probably late Georgian, maybe early Victorian. Here are two cameos made from queen conch shells. It's a kind of very pale pink or even white shell. The one on the left, I believe, is Victorian. We can see a Greek or Roman lady. This was originally a brooch that has been converted into a pendant. And the one on the right I inherited. It's a very pale, almost white conch shell. This is one that I've actually been thinking about converting to a ring. I think I'd probably wear it more often as a ring. One thing to be aware of with pink cameos, pink shell cameos, is that they often get called by people selling them online as angel skin coral cameos. So angel skin coral cameos do exist, but they're not very common, and most of the time it's actually a queen conch shell. So it's quite important to be aware of that difference, because the coral ones are quite a bit more valuable. Here are 4 more shell cameos, but these ones have been carved from a different shell. It's usually called the sardonyx shell. And it's a really slow growing shellfish, so they can't get as many shells to use for cameos. I really love this look because, as you can see, the background is quite a bit darker than the other ones we saw with the carnelian shell. And so the contrast is really beautiful, in my opinion. The one on the left is quite a classic subject, a lady looking to the right. This was actually the first cameo I ever bought for myself. I just fell in love with her. I don't think she's particularly old. You can often tell the more modern cameos because the ladies have smaller and upturned noses, and hers is a little bit like that. I think she's early 20th century. The next one over is actually an unset cameo. So it's just a shell with no mount. It's actually been signed on the back, which is a sign that it was done by someone important. So this is Bacchante, I believe, a follower of the Roman god Bacchus. So Bacchus was the Roman god of wine and pleasure, and Bacchantes are his followers. So they're people who really like to party hard. You can tell this is a Bacchante because she, I think it's a she, can't always tell for sure, she is wearing grapes and grape leaves, so that indicates the wine. I can tell that this cameo was at some stage set into jewellery and worn quite a lot, because we can see that it's kind of worn, the top is worn down. I find that actually really charming. It's not too worn away. So my guess is that someone wanted to scrap the metal and get it made into something else, and so they took this cameo out of its frame. It happened a lot, and still happens unfortunately, because not everyone really values and appreciates cameos. Now this one here is another mythological theme. We have there Hebe, who is a daughter of Zeus. So she's a Greek goddess, and her job was to be the cupbearer for the gods, to feed them ambrosia. So there she is feeding ambrosia to an eagle, and the eagle was actually her father Zeus, who would visit in eagle form. So you do find quite a lot of Victorian cameos that are of this subject matter of Hebe and the eagle, because there were quite a lot of paintings done in the 1700s and 1800s. There were probably quite a few Georgian cameos like this as well. The cameo on the far right is a personal favourite of mine, and I probably wear it more than any other cameo. I absolutely love the sense of movement in this carving. I believe it's Persephone. Persephone was another child of Zeus, so a Greek goddess, and her mother was Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. Unfortunately, she was abducted and taken down to the underworld by Hades, and her mother, Demeter, missed her so much, so she made it always winter so that no crops could be harvested. Everyone was about to starve, so an arrangement was made where Persephone got to come up and spend half the year at Olympus with her mother, and the other half was down the underworld. So this might be the moment where she gets to go back up again and she's happy. It's springtime. I think she may have an hourglass in her hand. I'm not 100% sure about it being Persephone, because I have seen some other cameos that are very similar, and they've been described as one of the 9 muses from Greek mythology, but who knows. So she is a 9-carat gold and a pendant. So that was all the shell cameos. Now moving to stone. This cameo is made from volcanic stone called tuff, but it's usually described as lava. So these are known as lava cameos. They come from Pompeii. So Pompeii was destroyed in 79 AD by a massive eruption of Mount Vesuvius. It was a Roman city, a very wealthy one, and in the 1700s they started excavating it. They discovered it and started excavating the ruins. So all the ruins of Pompeii were under layers of volcanic matter. So there was lots and lots of this material to carve, and it became a really popular tourist site, Pompeii. People wanted to go and look at the ruins in the late 1700s, 1800s, even today. And cameo carvers started using this material as a way to make mementos for people to take home as souvenirs. So they became very popular. One thing about lava cameos is that the material doesn't naturally have different layers of colour. So in order to give depth to the cameo, to make it look three-dimensional, they're actually usually carved quite high, so that they have a high relief so that shadows can create that sense of depth. I believe the subject is a Roman lady. She's wearing a toga and she has a headdress, and it's a 9-carat gold brooch. Last, but certainly not least, we have these 2 incredible hardstone cameos. When it comes to the value of cameos, hardstone cameos are more valuable than shell cameos in general. If everything else is equal, for example the size, the quality of the carving, the subject matter, and the quality of the mount, if those things are all equal, then hardstone cameos are certainly worth more than shell cameos. And within the shell cameos, the sardonyx shell cameos are worth more than the carnelian shells, because the carnelian shells are more common, the shellfish grows faster. So if everything else is equal, then a sardonyx shell cameo like this one on the right is going to be more valuable than the carnelian shell cameo on the left. But more valuable again is the hardstone cameos. So these are both from the 1800s. Both of these cameos are mounted in 18 karat gold. The very rich yellow tone of the gold is a giveaway there, but I've also had them XRF'd to check. And both of them have a mount that is in the Etruscan revival style. The person who really spearheaded the Etruscan revival movement in the 1800s was an Italian jeweller called Castellani. He was particularly fascinated by the ruins that were being excavated in the 1830s to the 1850s roughly, including the Etruscan ruins. In particular, he was fascinated by the jewellery because he could see that the jewellery had techniques that were largely lost to time. At that time, most jewellery was made and patterns were made by cutting, carving, in some way distorting the metal. But in the Etruscan pieces, he could see that they were actually adding to the metal. They were adding little balls called granulation and wire work as well. So he got the people in his workshop to figure out how to make these pieces again in a similar way, to rediscover those processes. And that's what we can see here. The one on the right has some lovely wire work or rope work and beautiful patterns there, and the one on the left is particularly spectacular in this way. We see the little dots of gold, granulation. We can see the wire work, and in this case we also have enamel. There's a whole lot of little circles that are white enamel, and then in the middle of each circle is a tiny dot of red enamel. When you hold that piece, it's quite impressive. Not only is it really heavy, but the detail is just extraordinary. So I've looked into the works of Castellani. If you're lucky enough to find one of his pieces which is actually signed as a Castellani, it's worth a lot of money. Unfortunately, this piece is not signed as a Castellani, but it is very, very much in the style. The mount is incredibly similar to some of his works, or the works of his sons. So I think we would call it in the style or in the manner of Castellani. It is possible it was made by someone in his workshop. Either way, it's really quite an incredible piece. So coming to the cameos themselves, they are both carved out of hardstone. The one on the right is carnelian, so you have an orange layer and a white layer that have been utilised to make the cameo. And then on the left we have a banded agate, and it actually has 3 different layers here that have been used. We have a dark kind of browny grey colour at the back, a pale colour which is most of the head, and then right on top we have a layer which is kind of a peach colour, and it's been used to make some leaves and fruit on the person's head. So when you get a cameo with 3 or more layers that have been utilised like this, it makes them particularly special, particularly valuable, and also really three-dimensional, as you can see here. It's got a high relief there as well. Unfortunately, this piece does have some damage. It has a large chip under here and a crack on that side. The damage is a bit surprising because the mount itself has absolutely no damage. So it is possible that the cameo was actually damaged before it was mounted originally. I'll turn these 2 cameos over so you can see the back. They're both brooches with safety chains. I suspect this safety chain didn't originally come from the top like that. This one has a glass compartment where you could put hair, and this one probably had a glass compartment but it doesn't have it anymore, and we can touch the back of the stone there. They're both very beautiful pieces. So here are all the cameos back together again. If you've made it this far, thank you. I'd love to hear any comments that you might have, or any questions. Maybe you have a favourite from these cameos, or maybe you collect cameos yourself and you have a certain type that you prefer. The cameos on the left, these ones here, are all from my collection, and the rest, all of these ones, they are all for sale. They're either on my store right now on Etsy, or they'll be coming on there soon. So thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on the next video that I make about antique and vintage jewellery. Bye.